question is just tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from vaguely? Do you have any YouTube, Twitch, social media, anything that people can find you on if you want to be found? If not, that's fine.
Yeah, my name is Brandon. I go by the handle Deuteronomy. Over the last, I don't know, 10, 10, 15 years or so. And I live in the Northwest currently. Grew up on the Gulf Coast, right outside New Orleans. But I was mostly in the Gulf Coast area when I was playing UO in the early days. I don't have any like YouTube. I mean, I have a YouTube channel, but like it's usually just for uploading videos. It's not for any kind of public appearances or public, Twitch streaming or anything like that. It's usually just for, videos or recordings. But I don't really have a social media presence other than, private Facebook.
All right, fair enough, fair enough. How old were you when you started playing Ultima Online, and in what year was this?
Yeah, so I was 12 years old, about to turn 13. This was the summer of 1998. June 1998 is when my account was created on UO.
All right, nice. So you've been playing for a long ass time, man.
Yeah, almost 20 years.
How did you hear about Ultima Online, and what provoked you to start playing it?
I remember seeing in the electronic boutique store. I don't even know if they're around anymore, but I remember seeing the black box. It had like the Velcro cover on the front of it. Like inside, it had the cloth map and the pewter UO symbol, you know, pin that you could wear, and all sorts of fun little stuff that Richard Garriott was known to put in his games. But I remember like the box, and it had like "Are you with us?" on the back. Um, and I remember like that looks amazing. I was a console player up to that point, and I just gotten like a Windows 95 computer. It was like a was that company? It wasn't Dell. It was like Gateway, I think. It was like huge, at least in the 90s. And I remember seeing the box. I was really interested in Duo and what it was, at least what it appeared to be. I mean, I had been playing Diablo at the time, so like that's kind of how I learned about it. But I didn't get to play it at first. Like the internet at the time was still very new. Like AOL was the big thing. Like all the thousands of hours of CDs or whatever that you got in the mail. Um, so instead, I had gotten like the Ultima collection, so I kind of learned about like, oh, Ultima is this big series that I had no idea about, and I played that leading up to that summer. And like I said, that summer, by that time I was able to actually get it that June of 1998.
Yeah, nice, man. Yeah, I watched the commercial and it says "Are you with us?" like at the end of the trailer, so I guess that was their catchphrase at the time.
Yeah, I didn't even known about the commercial until I think honestly like 6 months ago I saw it on YouTube.
Yeah, I watched it there too. Anyways, so I was gonna ask you, how did you hear about Ultima? Oh wait, I already asked that. We'll cut that out. Uh, um, so what are your best and most fond memories from Ultima Online? And you can say as many as you want. I like this is the thing that I want. This is the thing I want most is like a veteran's most memorable moments of what made Ultima Online a great game.
Yeah, so I've thought about it, and as I've mentioned, there's a lot. I mean, I could talk for hours and hours and hours on just random stuff that I came across and saw and did, and just. But I'm going to try to keep it as chronological as possible, so you can kind of get an idea of how the game shifted and kind of how things changed over time. I'll start with literally like the first 5 minutes of the game because I do remember that very clearly. I started off in Minot, right outside the Barnacle. The Barnacle's the tavern in Minot. And I remember coming out of the tavern and I attacked a bird. I saw a bird in town. And I'm immediately guard whacked. Just straight up. Not even 5 minutes in the game at this point. I'm already killed. I'm dead. I'm a ghost. Everything's in grayscale. And I don't know anything about the game because the game comes with like a little cheat sheet of like, this is how you double click, and this is how you click and drag, and this is how you use a skill, and that's about it. Like they had no instructions for this game pretty much.
Yeah,
And
sandbox.
yeah, exactly. So I get guard whacked, have no idea what happened, didn't realize that blue meant it was tamed by somebody. And I start wandering around and I go end up at the bank, didn't know it at the time. And people are what I think just ignoring because I'm asking like how do I be not dead anymore and how do I fix this and what happened? Of course, I think they're ignoring my questions, but I didn't realize that you have to have a spirit speak skill in order to actually like interact and talk with ghosts. So I think they're just ignoring me. Some of them are actually telling me to like do this or go there, and I'm thinking they're telling me like to buzz off, but basically they were actually giving me instructions to the healers. So I kind of just wander around, eventually log off, create a new character, and that was my first like 5 minutes, 5 to 15 minutes of the game. And I create a new character. I still go into Minot because it's the only town that I'm vaguely aware of at this point. And I get a job with a local miner. I think his name was Handel, Handel, and he bought ingots cheap from newbies. He was like, "I'll give you pickaxes, and you can go to the Mount Kindle mines, and you can mine and get ore, and you can use the ore to smelt into ingots, and you can sell the ingots to me, and I'll buy them." He'll buy them for like 6 gold, where you could sell them, or he'll buy them for 5 gold or whatever, and you could sell them for like 4 gold to the NPC. So if he went to buy them from the NPCs, it'd be like 8 gold. So he was kind of making a, like you were making more money selling it to him, and he was saving money by not having to buy it from the NPCs or maybe some price gougers who were selling it for 6 or 7 gold. So that's kind of how I got introduced to mining. I go to Mount Kindle, and then I got introduced to PKing and thieves. And so, there were these thieves that would come through, kill pack horses, kill players. I remember like charging them with like no swordsmanship, just like swinging at them and them just laughing and just fireballing me in the face, blind looting me. And I also learned that with that money that I could go then buy ale and get drunk. Like I said, I'm 12 years old at the time, so me stumbling around drunk and puking is like the coolest thing ever. And yeah, so that was kind of my experience, my first sort of experiences in UO. And I remember very clearly going, yeah, I'm gonna be an anti-PK, or I'm gonna be a good guy. And I heard about Trinsic and paladins being there, and that's a whole nother story that I won't get into tonight. But basically, like that was my that was my focus, was I was going to be a good guy someday, which we'll come back to. um, I do remember another time I had met a buddy Chalangalang who was a miner as well, and he was like, "Hey, dude, let's go to Vesper." Now, understand that Vesper is like 5 screens away from Minot. It is like a 30-45 second run from Minot to Vesper. There's nothing. This isn't a far distance. This isn't like a trip to Mordor or anything like that. This is just down the street. But to me, it felt like it was, this grand adventure to some other country, like wandering these woods. I have no idea where I'm going. And he's like, "We're gonna go grave robbing. Let's go to the Vesper Cemetery to grave rob." By the way, I don't think you can actually rob graves. But he gave me a shovel. He gave me a weapon. I think he gave me a mace, which I wasn't a mace fighter, so that wasn't going to help me any. And we go off to adventure, and we go to the Vesper Cemetery, and it's just giant rats and small rats and slimes, and we can't heal each other, and we don't know what we're doing, and he gets killed. He gets covered in these monsters, and he gets killed. I'm not near him, kind of on the outskirts of this big zerg of monsters, and I run away. So now I'm in Vesper. My buddy died, and I have never seen him again since. That was 1998. I never saw him again in my life. And he was my buddy in Minot, and I never saw him again. So if Chalangalang hears this, how you doing, bud? I was Ryu, and I let you down, I guess. But so that was like a very like pivotal moment for me, because I always look for this guy after the fact, like, oh my god, whatever happened to him? And in Minot, I had met a girl, Nicole, and she was like a crush, and she was my age. Again, I'm 12 or maybe 13 by this time. And like I come back from Vesper after a week. Like I said, this is right up the road, but I feel like I'm stranded in this other town altogether. And I finally come back, and I just remember telling people like, I've been on an adventure. I've seen things, like I'm this coming back from Nam or something like that. It's like you were in another town and you got attacked by slimes. Like it's not the same, but whatever. Like these people are like tamers and GM mages and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, so that was kind of like one of my first forays. Some drama happens. I kind of leave Minot, and I join like the Order. Like there's the Order Chaos faction system. I think like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be part of like the good guys, and we're gonna fight Chaos. And then I find out that Order and Chaos is just this global war highlighting system where everybody can kill each other. So I just got killed and blind looted by everybody. It's kind of a trend that happens in the first year or two. And but I decided like I'm going to try something different. Like I'm going to be the hunter. I'm tired of being the hunted. So I decided to go bounty hunting. I get my first bounty, and I decide like, oh, you know what? I'm not bad at this. I just got lucky. And I decide to hunt players. Like I now know the woods a little bit. I'm gonna go kill players because that was a lot more fun than killing monsters, and I get like cool loot. So I start murdering, and I'd hide in the trees. I remember like punching. Like if I didn't have anything, I'd like punch like skeletons or orcs, and I'd take their hatchet and I'd use the hatchet on the tree to get wood, and I'd use the hatchet on the logs to whittle out a crossbow or shafts, and then I'd kill a chicken or a bird to get the feathers. I'd double click the feathers on the fletching to make the arrows, and then I'd hide behind a tree and shoot a newbie as they ran by, and then run them down with the axe, and I'd take their stuff and put it on, and then I go kill an orc to get ring mail and a bone helmet. And I mean, it was just like survival out in the woods of Minot, just killing people. Now, granted, I only had like 50 to maybe 70 of any of these skills because you have skill limits, and the skill gain was pretty slow anyway. But it was interesting because I never had that experience outside of that maybe like 3 or 4 weeks of playing, where I was just kind of like hiding in a canopy of trees and like hunting people on the roads. I didn't have a house. I didn't have a PK network to work with. It was just me playing the game. And as far as I was concerned, this was how people played the game. Like I didn't know that other people were like adventuring in dungeons. I was like, what's a dungeon? I knew there was kind of a dungeon nearby, but I didn't ever go really into it. And I was like, oh yeah, this is what people do in the game. They just like, kill orcs, and then they do all this random stuff, and then whittle a crossbow and shoot people in the back of the head when they run by. I had no idea. But yeah, I thought that, and of course, when I say newbies, I was also a newbie. I mean, I'm 13 at the time. I thought bandages were worms. I thought empty bottles were light bulbs because of how they looked. I thought the healing skill had something to do with potions because of like my experience with Final Fantasy. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I didn't pick up healing and bandages as a skill until I was like 14 years old. I was a complete idiot. And but apparently I did something right. My friend said I had a 500,000 gold bounty on my head. I still don't necessarily believe that, because he was like, dude, we should totally kill you and turn your head in and split the bounty. I'm like, I don't know about a 500K bounty. Maybe it was a 50K bounty. Either way, it was a ton of money for 1998. So apparently I killed some people who didn't know the bounty system, and they put way too much money on my head. I have no idea. All I know was that I had a bounty on my head. I told my friend, no, I'm going to see how high I can get. And like 48 hours later, I got killed and statted, or my head was taken, so my bounty was taken. So I blew that opportunity to take all that money. That'd have been really nice, considering I didn't see that much money for like 4 years. Like it would have been a huge step in the right direction. I didn't do it, so who knows?
Oh damn,
But
man.
yeah. So that was kind of like my introduction to PvP and murdering and PKing and bounty hunting, and then shortly thereafter T2A is released. So this is like the first big expansion for 2.0. And I remember going to Delucia and working as an escort, or not as an escort, not that kind of escort, not like not like not like cybering. I was a mercenary, so I would actually escort players just like I would escort NPCs. Like there were the NPCs that you could bring from town to town, and they would give you money. And I would do the same thing for players. Like if you want to go from Vesper to Delucia, you pay me like 500 gold or 1,000 gold, and I'll take you there by foot and I'll protect you on the way. Like this isn't a role playing thing. This isn't like we're pretending to go from place to place and we're going to have this role play. No, it was literally like there are PKers on the other side of this tunnel who will jack your stuff if you come out of this tunnel by yourself. So like I made a small business. Now, granted, my goal per hour was garbage. Like I could have been hunting monsters and making a ton of money, but I hated PVM. Still do. But like it was this natural, this like organic dynamic of, hey, you're trying to get to Delucia. Like, yeah, there's some PKers, and I'd pick up my quarterstaff. I'd be like, all right, for 1,000 gold, I'll get you there. All right, cool. So I would walk them through the wilds of the frontier to Delucia. And then if somebody needed to go somewhere from Delucia to Britannia or whatever, I'd walk them through it and take them to the other side. Because back then you couldn't recall back and forth. You had to go through these tunnels to get to different servers. And that was, I'd say, sometime in '99, I guess. And so sometime, yeah, maybe '98 or '99, I decided like, okay, I'm not doing PVM to make money anymore. Like I'm going to stick with PvP. I'm going to stick with like this. And again, like before, I just thought everyone did this. I thought that was kind of how people played the game because that's all I had really ever had experience with.
Yeah.
And now there is one exception to the whole PVM thing. Now this was after the Trammel split. So when Feluca and Trammel split up, Trammel was like consent PvP only. It was you couldn't attack people, you couldn't really loot people, which I'll get into here in a second. But it was kind of like the consent PvP versus non-consent PvP split. And there's a dungeon called Wrong, and it had these executioner NPCs that could like 2 to 3 shot pretty much any player in the game easily. They swung fast, they hit hard, and they looked like brigands. So like the brigand NPCs that look like just regular hobo NPC guys, like a shirt and shoes maybe and pants, and they carried an axe, and they looked like these brigands who were pretty easy to kill. Now, they were not easy to kill. They had magic reflect 100% of the time. They had reactive armor as well 100% of the time, and they had a lot of hit points. So this was after Trammel, so this was after UOR, UO Renaissance came out, and I made a wrestle macer. So I used a quarterstaff and a warhammer, and I had my fists. And what I would do is I'd disarm these executioners. There were 2 executioners that would spawn in this dungeon. And I would disarm the axes so that they couldn't hurt me. And then I just beat them to death, slowly but surely. Now, NPCs like this, they have the humanoid AI. So just like orcs and ratmen, if you die, they'll loot you. They'll loot corpses. So what I would do is I would lure these 2 executioners to the entrance of the dungeon Wrong. Remember, like DSL is the thing right now. DSL, maybe cable. People are still using dial-up though. When you jumped from outside the dungeon and teleported to the server that the dungeon was in on, by the time that 2 seconds that it took for you to load up the dungeon, you were killed by these 2 executioners. Like just straight up insta-gib. So I would sit there just off screen and watch as people just came through. And of course, their buddies are like, oh, yeah, I'm coming in to help. And they would just get killed as well. And the whole time, the NPCs are like walking over these corpses, just randomly looting stuff. Now, what they would do is eventually the corpses would decay. And in the early days of Trammel, if the corpses decayed from a corpse to bones, anybody could loot the bones. So I would wait for them to turn bones, run up, disarm the executioners, and then loot the bones real quick. And then I'd kill the executioners, take their loot plus the loot that the executioners took from players. Then I'd recycle the whole
Holy
plan.
shit.
So, and then also, like I said, the executions look exactly like brigands. Well, on the first level of wrong, spawn brigands. So I would leave those those executioners on the first level. So if they wandered around, people would be like, "Oh, look, a brigand. I'll just walk right by it." And then they get two shot before they even realize what was going on. So it's just like, I think it was spring break. I was, I guess, a freshman in high school, and that was like the first million I made. And it was just in wrong, killing and looting players and taking kills and just general, asshattery. And
Yeah.
that was fun as hell, obviously, but at least for me. But that was really about the extent of PVM that I would do, and I wouldn't even go so far as to say that most people would consider that PVM. But speaking of Trammel, I will say this: there was the Trammel Feluca split. So the storyline leading up to Trammel's creation was that Minax from the Ultima series was coming and trying to destroy the world. And Lord British is like, we're not going to do that. We're going to try to take all the Britannian citizens away from here. And there's this huge undead invasion of Trinsic. And what they did was they basically barricaded Trinsic off, and it became this war zone. It was just undead everywhere. Guard zones gone. So like PKers were running through there, killing people. I remember like you had to use like this crack in the wall to teleport to the other side of Trinsic. Like you couldn't recall into the area, and you couldn't just walk into it. You had to like sneak in like, these holes in the walls. And I remember like there were some randoms and some role players in Trinsic, and I was with them, and there was like this huge like barricade in the tavern. Like we were holding off as much as we possibly could in the tavern, like something out of a zombie movie. And it's just skeletons and zombies and ghouls and you had liches spawn, and that was kind of what killed us was the liches and like rotting corpses, which were like these tanks that could like deadly poison and just wipe people out. And our front line fell apart, and they start flooding through the tavern, and I was able to push through and get out, but all you hear is just people dying left and right, but like off screen. And I'm like, this is terrifying, but it's also amazing. I got out, I think. I don't remember. I know I died in there by PKers a bunch, so who knows? I probably turned a corner and got bolted in the face. But what was really cool was this was on every server. So every server was going through this lore. But on our server, we had the undead role players, and we had the Shadow Clan orcs. And so when the final battles happened, it was Dupre that was leading the charge. So all of the good guys are like, we're gonna purge Trinsic, and so Dupre leads this, valiant charge into Trinsic. And Juonar, which was, I guess, Minax's general or whatever, like the GMs. One GM was playing Dupre, one GM was playing Juonar, and they went out to the guilds. They went out to Undead, and they went out to Shadow Clan and said, defend Minax and defend Juonar and repel the Britannians. So what was really cool was it was this, this was this a game-wide event, because leading up to the big split, to the big UO Renaissance kind of expansion, and you had all the players, all the good guys following Dupre into the town, and then you had all the NPCs and the monsters, plus the Shadow Clan orcs who were dressed like orcs, role-playing orcs, and you had like the undead dressed like bone armor and pretending to be zombies and stuff like that. And they were PKing players trying to repel this alongside all the NPCs. And like there was this huge battle where Juonar was like trying to stop Dupre, and all the players are rushing up to kill Juonar, and all the Shadow Clan and the undead are trying to repel them. It was just cool. It was just really neat, because you don't see that kind of interaction on a role play level But it's also very organic. It's the GMs are getting involved in creating the storyline, but you have like players on both sides of it. It's not just players attacking NPCs. You have players, also attacking players.
Yeah, it's like games don't do anything like that anymore. Like you're making me jealous, man. I wish I was around to play it then.
Yeah, and
It came out the same year I was born, right? 1997. I'm 20, so the game's as old as I am.
yeah, 97 was when it came out, and I started playing it roughly not even a year after. So yeah, it's if you're about 20, then yeah, about the same year. Um, and yeah, you don't see that kind of interaction between GMs and players much anymore. I will say this, there was an EM event, so event moderators kind of changed the GM. So when UO came out, they had seers, I think were paid volunteers or something like that, and then you had GMs, which were volunteers, and the seers would do a lot of different random encounters and stuff like that, which was really cool. But you had these event moderators, and Catskills, which was the server that I played on, Catskills had the leader of Britannia, and this was, I don't know, I guess 2006, 2007. I don't quite remember. Oh no, it couldn't have been that late because I was in college. So maybe 2004. And this was right after Age of Shadows came out. So this is when UO went to the what we call Diablo kind of format of gaming, where item based, and you had like weapon statistics and armor statistics and special moves and all sorts of stuff. And this had just released, and our leader for Catskills was Court Malik. That was the character, and he led this event into the Hedge Maze. So the Hedge Maze was this huge hedge maze with like wizards and demons in the center of this big maze, and he led this huge player expedition here for an event. So there was a bunch of monsters, and the monsters got stronger and stronger the longer we were there, and it was about putting the enemy down, and there might be another mine axe incursion and all this role play. And I remember going there with my guild because our guild at the time was like, we don't trust Court Malik. Disclaimer real quick, I role played pretty much nonstop from when I was like 14 or 15 years old on. So I was in either part of role playing guilds or at least just immersed. And our role play was like, okay, we're going to go there to keep an eye on Court Malik because we don't trust this guy. He's behind fishy stuff. Ever since he showed up, nothing can be trusted about this guy. All sorts of bad stuff's happening. And so we go there, and we're helping some people that got killed. So when the event was over, apparently Minax showed up. Another GM was playing Minax. She shows up, tells them all to leave, and Court Malik's retreats through the moon gates, takes everybody back to Trammel, and the event's over. Well, we were kind of on the outskirts of the event, helping players that got lost and killed by all the monsters. And this was in Felucca, so there was Felucca rules. There could have been PKers and stuff like that too. And I remember picking some people up, and I'm like, okay, guys, this is our rendezvous point. I'm going to be right back. I'm going to go make sure that there's nobody left behind. And these are random players that we're finding and helping loot their corpses. And I go back, and I see Minax. And she's waving her arms, and she's hitting, I guess, like her hotkey for the little speech that she gave, and she's like telling people to flee and everything. And I'm like, huh, that's interesting. Her health bar is red. So red being that she's an evil NPC or a murderer. And normally when your character is run by a GM, they have a yellow health bar because they have their invincibility on. So as she's waving her hands at me, I decide to shoot her in the face with my heavy crossbow. And it hits, and it does damage. So I'm kind of standing there like, oh, I'm about to get killed, and I shoot her again. And all of a sudden, she starts running at me, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be bad. So I start running around in circles, kiting this, obviously a player who's playing this predetermined Minax character. And I'm running around shooting her with this crossbow. And I'm telling my girlfriend at the time, like, get over here. I need help. I need help. Come up here. I'm fighting. Like, I'm under attack. I'm like typing in party, trying to type as much as I can while I'm running around, because even though she's on foot, she's a GM, so she's moving really, really fast. And like every so often she'd cast a spell at me. Now, remember, I've been PvPing for several years by this point, and I could just tell she's like double clicking the icons in the spell book, so it's taking her a while to like get the icons up. Like she didn't come in expecting to fight or PvP. Like this is probably somebody who's like a bank sitter or just a volunteer, and all of a sudden I force this character into PvP, and this person probably has never PvP'd before. So now I'm running around shooting Minax, the Enchantress from the Ultima series, and the person playing it has no idea how to PvP. And now my girlfriend runs up, and she's just like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm shooting Minax. I'm shooting Minax." So all of a sudden, everyone on the server has left. It's just us, and so I'm running around shooting her, and we get her down to like half health or something like that. She had a ton of hit points, and my girlfriend at the time, like I said, she gets hit and like is almost killed instantly. So she runs off, and she runs inside the building to avoid getting hit by spells or anything. And I kind of throw bombs and try to get Minax to come, back towards me. And Minax, I guess, realizes that she's losing and that this could only get worse. And it would be really awkward if a bunch of players just killed Minax and took all this like special loot that no one's supposed to have. So she runs through the wall of the building, kills her on the other side, and keeps running. And I can't catch up with her because she counts as like on a horse, and she's just hauling ass through building walls and stuff, like I said, because she's a GM character. And so I res her, and I get her back up, and we go back, and it was just kind of like, that was cool. I just beat Minax in a fight. Like we just beat Minax while the rest of like Britannia ran away. Like those kinds of things you don't really get to see in games anymore. But like I said, I think my earlier experiences with the game kind of gave me a different perspective. It wasn't like, oh, this is a scripted event. It was a scripted event, but my perspective because of early UO, was anything goes. If you're red or you're blue, or if I can attack you, I can do it, and I will do it, right? So and that wouldn't have happened, I think, if my earlier experiences weren't what they were. So, and those experiences have carried on through other games as well. But, talking about GMs and interacting with players and stuff like that, even years later, you could see how the difference was. The GMs kind of came and said, okay, this is an event, versus the earlier, which was, we're going to go to the role-playing guilds on each individual server, contact the guild masters of each individual enemy or bad guy guild, and have them be a part of the storytelling and part of the lore, as opposed to, we're going to spawn some monsters, let's go. Oh, Minax came, let's go back. Different. I mean, just 5 years, it was a completely different, not even 5 years, it was a completely different trend, different expectation of EM or GM events.
Yeah, that's really interesting, honestly, because like I said, you just never see anything like that in game. And when you were talking about your like attacking Minax, it reminded me of the assassination of Lord British, the beta thing
Yep.
that, and just knowing that you can do that kind of stuff in game and have the GMs are like the lore characters and stuff is, and like I did also read about the orc guild as well. It's like actual, it's humans but they're dressed as orc.
Yeah.
It's so funny, honestly, to me.
Yeah, and they're still going strong. Oh, I
Really?
want to say strong, but they're still around on free shards. There's a bunch of different clans, because that was the great thing about it. Was it was kind of this I don't think it's divergent, maybe convergent evolution. This idea of every server had an orc guild. You had Blood Clan, you had Boulder Fist, you had Shadow Clan, you had all these different orc clans, and I don't think they were individually united in any kind of way, like from server to server. It was literally players going, "Hey, we can be orcs. Let's dress up as orcs," and multiple servers did it. I mean, it was just that kind of, it that it's to me, it's interesting from a game design perspective, because if you give players those tools in a sandbox, you can reliably get something out of those players. For example, you can have players become orcs. You don't have to force it on them. You just have to give them the tools, and you can guarantee some players are going to do it, whether it's on this server or on all servers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like there's no MMOs do that kind of thing anymore, and Honestly, if I were to design an MMO, like I would probably have races, but there would be no factions, right? Everyone would be the same. Just it'd be like everyone would be their own adventurer. You could do whatever you want, and like sure, you could group with like a bunch of different orcs and form like your own orc clan. Pretty much what they
Right.
did, but you would be able to choose orc. Like you know how you can choose gargoyle, you can choose elf
Yeah.
now. Like I would have, like you could. There's probably like gargoyle clans as well in Ultima Online right now or something.
Maybe. I mean, that's. I mean, honestly, I will say from the Ultima series, the Gargoyles were probably one of the most interesting races I've ever seen in a fantasy
Yeah.
anything book or game. I mean, the Ultima 4 is it Ultima? No, Ultima 6 is one of my favorite Ultimas, as well as Ultima 7. But it's the Gargoyles realizing when you're the bad guy. Like that was a memorable moment from the Ultima series, at least.
Yeah, I've never played them, so I know they're like they're very well liked.
Yeah, I would recommend Ultima 6 if you can get a thing of it. But yeah, it'd be cool to see today if we would have had, you know, gargoyle guilds, if they were if gargoyles were a race back then. And
Yeah, weren't they added in like 2008 or something? Or
yeah, it came well after the sandbox era of UO, unfortunately. I mean, honestly, the sandbox era of UO kind of ended with Trammel in a lot of ways because of the split.
yeah,
Um, I will say, you know, with even though, well, I guess I'll use that as a segue into the next memory, because even though this was kind of after Trammel, there was still some elements of sandbox behavior. I mean, you saw what I did with Wrong, and then the Executioners. That was after Trammel. That's very sandboxy, but I had, like I mentioned before, I did some basic mercenary work, with the Delusion, traveling, escorting people from Delusion, Vesper, or wherever, back in like '99. Well, I kind of upped my game years later, with Trammel, by doing some mercenary work for guilds as well as individuals. So I would kill folks for gold. I mean, I did infiltration, I did sabotage, I did spying, and my operation costs were anywhere from 25,000 to 100,000 per contract. So it was a big jump from 500 to 1,000 gold just to walk somebody from one town to the other, to now I'm being hired for like killing and looting people, or leaving behind messages, or jumping into somebody's guild so I can be highlighted with them in Trammel, and then killing everybody in Trammel and looting them. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, how did that happen? It's like, I got hired by somebody. Thanks for the loot. Also, Sakar sends his regards or whatever. And, this is just to put in perspective. I was about 16 at the time. So this is a couple years after I've started. I would use like communication crystals. So early UO had these communication crystals that you could link up, and one was a receiver and one was a broadcaster, and it was kind of like walkie talkies, because the game didn't at the time have a way to communicate with players. And even though everybody used ICQ, you know the game still had to have some kind of attempt at long distance communication. So I would use these conversation crystals. A friend of mine, Pith, had had taught me this. He was a spy, and he was part of my extended support network when I did mercenary work and contracts, and he helped me get in touch with certain people. But you could put them on the ground. You could listen through walls. So I would put these throughout buildings and listen to conversations of players inside rooms and stuff, whether were role players or two people talking into a house in Feluca. It didn't matter. I would listen in on conversations. And then I would come up and knock on the door or walk into the room and say, it sounds like you've got a problem. I can help. And, it's, an enemy guild or somebody that's causing an issue or someone we need to get rid of. I'm your guy. And I'd offer my services. A lot of them would hear the price tag, the price of admission, and decline. And so this was, remember, a couple of years ago, I wanted to be an anti-PK and a good guy. This is a couple of years later. This is what happens, when good people get thrown into a sandbox for too long. So then I told them, like, okay, well, if you're not going to hire me, I'm going to go to the person you were talking about. I'm going to offer my services to them for a discount to kill you. And
Oh
so
shit.
my my first foray into extortion started. Remember, I'm 16 years old and I'm doing this stuff. And again, to me, this is how you play UO, not PVMing. The game's been out 5 years or 6 years by this point, and I gotta tell you, or 4 or 5 years by this point, and like I still haven't gone to all the dungeons. Like I haven't explored most of the PVM content in the game at all because I've just been running around just being a nuisance and a mercenary and an assassin and a saboteur and everything else. And so I did that for several years. In fact, I'm still known in certain circles because of those things that I did over 15 years ago. Um, it sounds maybe arrogant or whatever, but the reality is true. I will go to a server sometimes and people will message me like, "Are you the same Brandon from Catskills? Are you the same Brandon from this other server?" And
Holy.
and the like my name's Brandon. It's not like it's not like a well-known name or anything. Like it's anybody can be named that. Disguise kit can give you that name if you're a thief. So NPCs are named that. So people know who I am. Granted, usually it's with less than a preferable kind of stance to it. Usually hate my guts and don't want me anywhere near them. I remember my first time going to a free shard, a free server, was in 2006 or 2000. I think it was 2006. I went to Angel Island, and I wasn't there for 36 hours. I don't think. A few of our friends went, and so this is like my first time there. This guy looted my buddy. He had gotten killed by lizardmen. Like I said, we were just starting the server. He had gotten killed by lizardmen. A guy runs up and loots him, and me and my buddy Timeron, we run after him and kill him. And we take his stuff, go back to, because he was like a crafter, the guy we killed. We go to the healers in Minot, and the guy gets res, and he comes out, and I'm like, "Why'd you loot my buddy Slade?" And he's like, "Oh, I thought he was Slade from this other guild that's in Vesper, and I don't like him, so I looted the corpse." And I said, "Okay, well, I'm going to give you your tools back and your pitchfork, but I'm going to keep the gold. And I'm going to obviously give my friend his stuff back." And I think he had like 100 gold or something like that. I mean, it was nothing. He could
Yep.
kill 2 lizardmen and had it back. But we're going to keep the gold because we're the Minot guardsmen. That was kind of the guild that we were running at the time. And, if you're coming around here, don't be looting people that you shouldn't be, touching their belongings and everything else. So we gave him his stuff. He's walking away. Timeron and I are walking back to the bank. He stops. And so Ty and I kind of stopped too. Like, what's he doing? Like, he kind of just stopped and turned and looked at us, and he was just quiet for a second. So Timeron and I stop and look at him, and he says, "By the way, everything I've heard about you is clearly not true. I'm not going to listen to what people have to say, about your character or whatever, because I was fair in that exchange." Timeron's laughing his ass off because he's like, "Man, you can't go anywhere," because we had already tried going to different servers. People knew who I was there, and so I was kind of like, "I'd like to go to a server where nobody knows who I am, get a fresh start, play the game from from a different side of the law." And I'm like, "How the hell do they know who we are?"
Oh,
Because I've been here 36 hours or less, and these people, apparently somebody's been talking smack about me for years, because that server, the people basically I did the homework on it, people that left Catskills in like 2000, 2001 went to this server. I didn't go there for 4 or 5 years more. And apparently they talked about me there like the boogeyman, so that when I finally showed up 5 years later, people knew who I was. It's just silly. And it all started because I was 16 years old and I was killing people for money.
I
Again, like I said, I thought that was what people did in this game because that's the only extent of the game that I had been exposed to. That was it. Like, I didn't do any of the PVM stuff, so to me it was all about PvP, and it was all about the social interactions, guild wars, and everything else. It was never about the monsters.
exactly. Yeah, it's way more fun fighting organically with players.
Yeah, and especially in a meaningful way, which you get with looting and killing and stat loss and reds and everything else in a sandbox.
Yeah, I mean, another thing is I'd like to keep. I honestly, I could listen to you tell your stories all day, but we're almost hitting an hour here. We've been
Yeah.
talking for a long ass time, so I
I got. I only have the one more. I
okay,
actually only have the one
one
more.
more, yeah, one more.
I only have the one more. So this goes on. I do a lot of different stuff after that, but since 2009, I've been doing piracy and privateering. And I go to I got introduced to piracy because I don't know if you know about like the boats and ships and stuff like that in UO, but there's a guild called United Pirates on Catskills way back in the day. I was like 13 or 14, and that was kind of my introduction to ship combat and piracy. And in the last 5 or 10 years, I created like a privateer group. So we'd go after ships and usually start up a front like the Transit Trading Company or the Vesper Commerce Commission. And what we would end up doing is we'd extort the server's fishermen. We tell them that they had to pay us for protection. So, we're here for your protection. We don't know if you don't license with us, we don't know if you're pirates or smugglers, right? So this is for your own safety, not for ours. And so we'd say like the oceans are a privately owned commodity by the company. You have to pay to use our assets. And at first, it kind of just started off as a racket, which is basically what it is. And we'd also use these players, these licensees, as bait because when our competitors would come out to kill them, other pirates, we would then be told like, "Hey, I'm under attack." It's like, "Okay, we're coming." So they would pay us for the license, and then we would use them as bait, and then we'd come in and kill the competing pirates who were going after our licensees. So in a way, we actually became legitimate through actually just holding up our end of the bargain. And then we would also kill the fishermen's competition as well, because if you didn't license with us, we killed you and took all your stuff and took your ship or sunk it or whatever else. And so we were kind of like scratching each other's back. So, I still talk to a lot of these licensees. Even right now, I got a couple of them messaging me. So it's interesting that, in fact, a good buddy of mine, Tony, he was a licensee with the Vesper Commerce Commission. He was the first one with VCC, and he and I still talk. I mean, we're good friends, and so talking about sandboxes and memories, uh, this is easily something to kind of show how that sandbox, that non-consent PvP, how that can create memories just from like, oh, I could just attack you from one ship to another, but now I'm involving things like licensing. I'm involving things like role play. I'm involving things like extortion and racketeering. And then those players, even though they're victims at first, they kind of appreciate what you're bringing to the game, and then they become friends and they become allies, and they learn from it and they continue the story. I know I got a couple people on UOF that are still doing it. So it's just that kind of right there shows that even though it's been years since UO's heyday, you still have that exposure, you still have those experiences, and all it takes is a sandbox mechanic to allow that kind of thing to flourish.
Yeah, exactly. Um,
That's it for memories, though. You're good.
yeah, man. I mean, like, I'd be happy to let you keep going, to let you keep talking about more. I mean, they're really interesting. You're making me want to play the game and get into it. It's just, this is gonna be a long ass video, man.
No, I'm sorry. I'm
No, no,
sorry. Like
no.
I
It's
said,
all
that was
good.
that was the last one I had written down.
It's
So
all good. It's all good. So my next question is, well, what year do you think Ultima Online was at its very best, or what was like your favorite expansion?
yeah, so kind of the year is hard because every year I got to experience something different. Like you could kind of see that with the stories as they kind of progressed.
Yep.
I'd say anything Feluca based is the best though. Kind of that's was why I kind of talked about that, the piracy and stuff, which is what we're still doing today. Um, as kind of the best. Even though much of my mercenary work came after Trammel, I would say anything pre-Trammel or Feluca base is where you're going to get the most out of the game. Now, considering T2A, so like Delucia, Papua, back in 1999, I mean, the game itself was garbage. There was bugs, there was exploits, knuckle dragging, tank mage PvP. I'm talking like Neanderthal grade PvP, just really just bottom of the barrel game mechanics. But it's all we knew at the time, so we dealt with it. UOR, at least through Warriors of Bone, with special moves. But honestly, there's never been a good expansion or a good era game wise for UO. I would say Angel Island, which was that free shard I mentioned earlier, took the good things that UO did and made them better in terms of balance, engaging PvP gameplay. And again, it was Feluca based. And I had a lot of role play and interactive and immersive experiences, a lot of griefing too, which was fun on Angel Island. So I think, uh, anything Feluca based and Angel Island being the pinnacle of that.
All right, nice. So, what about Ultima Online's worst state? Do you think it had like a worst year for it?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Pretty much anything after Age of Shadows and the following expansions made the game a lot worse. It made the game grindy. It became about item based, like PVM and items, and could be blessed and insured really easily. So like there was no more looting anymore. Items didn't break really. I mean, it was really cool because it made warriors very powerful for once instead of just mages. But because of the item based nature of the game, it wasn't really skill based anymore. Huge skill gaps between the haves and the have nots. And that really was never what UO was about. Remember the story about me out in the woods just killing people with a crossbow with 50 or 60 archery using a hatchet that I got from punching a skeleton in the face? Like that was UO. And now all of a sudden you've got these 1 or 2 shot weapons because you grind Doom Dungeon all day, or you do raid bosses. I mean, I would say Age of Shadows and every expansion since then, beyond a doubt, made the game worse.
So, is there like classic servers almost like classic shards that don't have Age of Shadows?
Free shards definitely. When Trammel came out, they had Siege Perilous, which was a Feluca based. I think you could only have one character on it. It was really slow skill gain. It was a cool server. I didn't get to play it. I should have. A buddy of mine went there, and I was like, I've got all this stuff going on in Catskills. I'm going to stay here. But of course, when Age of Shadows comes along, even as great as Siege Perilous was, Age of Shadows it wasn't good. It wasn't good anymore. It turned the game into something else. And even though you could loot people, you could loot everybody because Age of Shadows kept a lot of that looting and or insurance and stuff out of the game. It was still it still wasn't UO. The PvP after the item based combat, it still ruined it ultimately.
So, like, what would you say for someone like me, a new player? What would you recommend me like getting into the game? Is there any way to experience the game as it was back then, or is it kind of long gone by now?
So that's actually a pretty good question because that is the question every single UOer asks, and they don't like to hear the answer. The UOers will say, "Oh, what we need is, I mean, look at Legends of Aria, look at Albion Online. You'll see an isometric, kind of minimalist mechanic, right? A game with looting, with killing players, with bounty hunting, maybe, with housing, maybe." And they'll say like, "Oh, this is UO. We're gonna make UO great again. We're gonna do this. We're gonna bring UO back." And that's simply not the case because what made UO amazing was one, it was fresh, it was new. I was in Delucia. I made friends with a 50-year-old preacher and a 14-year-old cheerleader. You just don't have those experiences anymore. And this is while I'm killing people outside of town, but these people were still my friend, as nerdy as I was. And you don't have those experiences so much anymore because games today and will divide them up like this is a PvP server, this is a PvM server.
Yeah.
Well, free shards kind of do the same thing. They're either this is kind of a Trammel server or this is a hardcore PvP server. Now they may not launch saying that, but the mechanics in place make it that way. Like, oh, well, here comes 5 mages with precast spells. They run on your screen, drop you, kill you. And it's like, oh, well, that's how UO was. It's like, no, that's how free shards are because we have voice chat now. We didn't have voice chat in the 90s and the early 2000s. Not really, anyway. I mean, I remember being on a 3-way call with my head at a 45-degree angle, holding the phone in my head, talking to my friends down the street. Like, and it was a different voice chat kind of situation. You don't have the voice chat. You don't have the third-party programs today, like, we didn't have those back in the early 2000s and 90s. Not really. If we did, you were cheating. So, or you're a scummer if you were. But now you have to take those things into consideration. And I don't think the devs of the free shards are doing that. So like I would tell anybody else, if you want that experience, first of all, you have to find a Feluca-based server. The one that I'm looking forward to right now is UO Outlands. It's in beta right now. They're taking a lot of time with it, and they're putting a lot of emphasis on the PVM and the exploration. It's actually a whole new map, so it kind of keeps things fresh for everybody, old UOers and new UOers alike. It is Feluca based. There is killing and murdering. And the thing that was kind of the problem that created issues with Trammel, like no repercussions for Reds, they're addressing that, and they're addressing some of the modern issues that free shards deal with players. So if you were looking for a free shard that had, I'd say, that kind of experience, or at least that potential for an experience where the devs understood and appreciated the role players like the GMs did back in the day, like with the Trinsic War and everything, the Trinsic Invasion. I would say UO Outlands right now is probably your best bet. It's in beta. I'll send you some stuff if you're interested in looking at it. But
Yeah,
I
I
would
am
say,
because I actually wanted to keep playing the game, but I'm not. I'm kind of like I don't really know what the shards are. I'm on the. All I know is I downloaded the client. I'm playing on a high pop shard. I think it's Atlantic
yeah, Atlantic.
and like is that so that's the modern game, right? Or is that like
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's
okay.
going to be the actual game, the actual production UO.
Oh, okay, yeah. So would you suggest I keep playing there or should I wait for whatever what did you say it was called again?
It's called UO Outlands, and honestly, I would keep playing on it. I mean, UO Outlands is still in beta, but if you want to kind of see what UO has become, go ahead, kind of play around, go explore, see the content. They added a ton of content over the years. Granted, if you're doing, are you paying for it or are you doing the endless journey?
I haven't paid for anything yet. I'm just gonna
Okay, just a trial or whatever.
yeah, just a trial. I'm gonna
Okay.
see if I see try to get into it. Maybe I'll pay for it.
Honestly, it's a grind, and I think that's where UO started to fail. Was it, Eve Online is successful because it's different, and UO was different, but then it tried to become Diablo, it tried to become EverQuest, it tried to
Mm-hmm.
become other games, and that's not what made it popular. It's
Yeah,
not why
exactly.
people wanted to play it. That's why people still don't play it. That's why they play free shards. Most of the players that actually play UO are not on UO; they're on the free servers. So, I mean, play around with it if you want. I would say there's also UOF, UO Forever. That's been around for a couple years. That's where the trading company and the city of Trinsic, which is what I created back in the day, the Vesper Commerce Commission. That's where we did those things, and that's not a bad server. It's just it's been around a while. There's a lot of drama. There's arguably some corruption. GMs. I mean, it comes out, but I think Outlands is probably going to be one of the better experiences for you when that does go from beta to live.
All right, definitely keep me updated on that.
For
And
sure.
so you still play Ultima Online to this day and how, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when there's I haven't played it in a couple months, but I kind of got back into it looking at the Outlands beta.
Yeah, how so like so you just get into it, you play it for like a month or a couple months and then you kind of take a break, step away and wait for like a good experience to come around?
No, because of my RP background, like I'm of the mentality like you got to make your experience. Like RP is where you make it, and so I'll play the game a good 20 30 hours a week. I'll get involved in all sorts of politicking, things like that. Like that becomes my hobby.
Yeah.
Becomes my hobby at that point. And the reason I usually leave, like the reason we left last year with the VCC and the 2 years before that, with the Transic Trading Company, was the game got too easy. It got repetitive. It was
Yeah.
very much the same thing over and over again. And to me, some people love just logging in with their buddies, going and killing people, and like, yeah, we won again. Let's post something on the forums. For me, after a while, it's like, uh, I need something else. I'm a Dark Souls player.
Yeah, yeah.
That's my mentality. That's
Yeah.
where I'm coming from. So even though it's competitive PvP in some ways, it's got to be a little bit more than that. So with me, so long as there's that opportunity to be ambitious or try something new or to expand, that's great. But UOF, the population there is kind of dying, and I mean it's still relatively big. It's probably one of the bigger servers out there, at least until Outlands launches. But it's not big enough to keep growing. And so once I hit my glass ceiling, I'm like, all right, if nothing's gonna change, I'm gonna go do something else. And that's kind of usually when I quit,
Yeah.
come back
Yeah,
a year
fair enough, fair
later.
enough. So just throw like just a random number, anything that comes to your head. Well, not anything, but try to keep it accurate. How many hours do you think you've played the game for? Just like I know it's hard to pinpoint exactly, but just whatever you estimate.
Well, I've been playing UO since '98 with about 2 or 3 years off, like over, like on and off, but probably about 2 or 3 years total that I haven't been playing, maybe a little bit more than 3 years.
Yeah.
I'd say probably like 20,000 hours,
Oh, damn, man.
20 to 25K. Maybe not as high as 25,000, but I wouldn't imagine less than 20,000. I mean, you're talking about high school, you're talking about
Yeah.
college, after college. I mean, 4 hours a day, 8 hours on weekends, more even. Yeah, I mean, it was my hobby when I played it hard. It was definitely my hobby. And even though I went and played other games, other MMOs, I quickly went back to UO. So it's not like, well, what about this game or this game? It's like, well, I tried it, and then like for a month or so, or 2 months or 3 months, and then I came back.
Yeah, it's just that one game
Yeah,
that you grow up with that can never be replaced.
yeah, pretty much. And always trying to find the server that's gonna do it right this time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like that for a lot of classic WoW people, They kind of just
Yep.
they want the old game back. And I guess finally Blizzard is like, "Okay, here you go."
Yeah, it didn't help that they also shut down that
No,
vanilla emulation.
yeah, Nostalrius, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, all right, we'll get rid of it. Now we'll monetize it.
So anyways, how do you think Ultima Online compared to other MMORPGs like in that era? I don't know if you've played any before Ultima Online came out or if that was your first one. Well, you already
I
answered that
mean,
actually. You played console, right? And you played Diablo and stuff, and then you went to Ultima when it came
yeah,
out. So what like
yeah.
how much like how much better was Ultima than other games right at the time?
Well, like I said, it's the experience. It's what makes Ultima still better than most games to this day. It's why I'm looking forward to Star Citizen. I mean, that's my big hype right now. Because it's gonna. I mean, I have no interest in sci-fi or piloting a ship or anything, but as soon as I read Death of a Spaceman and realized there's permadeath, you could steal people's ships and loot them and hold them hostage and everything else, I was like, this is UO. These are the mechanics that you need, the sandbox mechanics you absolutely need to create the exact same feeling of Ultima Online. And so we're looking at other games at the time like Diablo or even other MMOs, DAOC, Dark Age of Camelot, you've got WoW, Anarchy Online. It was about the game, and I mean honestly, I don't think, and I've kind of talked about like the mix of players. You don't have that kind of mix when you divide your players between PvP servers and PvM servers. When you have a theme park, you divide your players, and so you don't get that kind of interaction and that meaningful that community. So I would say that when it compared to other games, the other games were just really bad versions of single player games that you could play with a lot of people. I always submit that MMOs are either terrible games or terrible MMOs. If it's a good game, it's a bad MMO. If it's a good MMO, it's probably a bad game
You know what? I
because
actually kind of think the same thing, honestly.
like you can't like think of like a Fallout or think of a Skyrim or Dark Souls or whatever. You think of a game where it's like a single player game and you like this is your custom experience, right? Like if you do this mission and you kill this person over this person, it's going to change the next quest. If you side with the Legion in New Vegas over the NCR, you're going to have these missions. The game changes depending on what you do. But I remember playing DAOC. I think I got like 300 or 400 quests in before I quit. And I remember I took a quest that was like, this box has Dracula's heart in it. Go take it to a druid on the other side of this area. And I brought it back, and I remember a newbie running up, getting the quest, and running off in front of me. And I was like, that was meaningless. That was a meaningless waste of my time. It had absolutely no bearing on me as a character. It has nothing to do with immersion. It was filler content. That's all it was, and it was a waste. It was a complete waste of my time and energy. And I think a lot of MMOs are like that. It's just a waste of time and energy. It's just a grind, a meaningless grind. At the end of the year, you look back and say, I got these cool shoulder pads that in 6 months are going to be patched glitched out because of power creep. Some new shoulder pads are going to be better with the new dungeon they're going to release in the expansion. Whereas, 20 years later, I'm still remembering memorable situations. I don't remember that time I got a special magic sword because it didn't have any bearing. Like, who cares? It's just items. It's just stuff. It's just pixels. But that's why I think UO was different, and it still is different because it created memories and not just stuff. It wasn't just a game to play.
Yeah, I mean that's like a really interesting point. Like, yeah, you're like you said, there really is not or has not ever been another game so focused on just do whatever the hell you want. And coming back to the like MMOs make bad games, I agree, and that's why I think most MMOs fail nowadays because even if you try to make a good game that's an MMO, like you're still not gonna have as good of a game as you can get with a single player game, and then the MMO
Right.
aspect's gonna suffer for it. But if you make like you just have to focus entirely on making a really good MMO first, and the gameplay can be like kind of shitty almost, and it's okay because the MMO aspects of the game are what's important in an MMORPG. That's what you're looking for. You're not like if I wanted to have insane fun combat, I'm gonna play Dark Souls. I'm not gonna play like WoW. I'm not gonna play an MMORPG because the combat and the content in it is a lot worse than a scripted single player experience. And the MMO aspect, like I said, is what really shines. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And the MMO caters to the lowest common denominator in like every way. PVM has to be accessible. It has to like it's the idea of a treadmill, right? It's like you may not be efficient, you may not be great at this game, but if you put enough hours in, you'll eventually get your drop. Whereas sandboxes, the gameplay might be a little different, but it's that same feeling like you would get in a Dark Souls or you would get in a Fallout or you get in another game. Whereas if you put the effort and you strive for efficiency, your ambitions can be different. Your ambitions can be greater because you can engage in social activities. You can be a trade empire or make a trade empire in UO where you don't PvP, but you make a lot of money to hire mercenaries to go PK your competitors' clients so that they stop shopping there and use those same PKers to protect clients when they come shopping at your mall. And then you use those PKers to kill harvesters that work at the competing vendor mall. And you hire up people to work for you, and then you undercut prices for someone else. Like that's how empires are created, but you don't have those tools. You don't have that social interaction. You don't have that work together or work against each other or work together against each other kind of dynamic in a game that's just grind for the next loot for your tier 7 rare class artifact for thieves or whatever until the next expansion.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like I like playing WoW, but my favorite activity is PvP and just world PvP. I get bored of raiding in like 2 weeks. It's not fun. Like I don't understand why people like it, and I wish there was. I just like the fact that the game, like older, like all, especially Ultima Online, can reward you for world PvP, and like you can set up cartels and gangs and take over the economy. I really wish there was like a nice mixture of like fun, engaging, scripted content with like the Ultima Online style of economy based MMORPG. Like you can make your own. Like you don't even have to do combat if you don't want. You could literally just be a crafter and be the richest guy on the server and hire people to protect you and like maybe you can send trade cards to other cities. This is like a hypothetical MMO. You have
Yeah.
like your own shop. You can send trade cards to cities that other players in the world could raid the trade card and like take your stuff. So you have to pay either players or NPCs or whatever to escort the trade card, and like there's just so much untapped potential in like the sandbox MMOs genre as of late. They're all trying. I feel like the reason they all fail is because they focus too much on gameplay and not enough on the MMO.
Yeah, they're not focusing on that. Like, and I think the most telling thing is you talked about being a crafter, never having to pick up a weapon. Think about all the most recent MMOs, whether they're from Korea, like ArcAge, or they're even DAOC. I think even had it this way. what do? You pick your class, and all your classes are like healer or paladin or sorcerer, something PVM slash PvP related. And then you pick what? A crafting skill. You pick a gathering skill. Warhammer Age of Reckoning did the exact same thing. Pick your class, tank, mage, or ranged DPS, tank, or support, whatever it was, and then you pick your one skill, your one support skill. And so you didn't have like I just want to be a crafter. I just want to be a merchant. It was like, I guess I'm a paladin, so I can go kill monsters so that I can get the resources to grind my alchemy or to grind my blacksmithing. But like everyone could be a blacksmith. Everyone could be an alchemist. Like there was no reliance on a trader or a merchant community because everyone had either all of the skills, they just had to grind them out because they were like secondary skills, or every character had one skill. Every character had either blacksmith, alchemy, or tailoring, whatever. And so it was just kind of built in like, oh, you can craft stuff and this encourages trade because you can only have one crafting skill. It's like, yeah, but I don't want to be a crafter and that person doesn't want to be a PVMer or a PvPer. So why can't they just be a crafter with all the
Yeah,
crafting skills?
yeah, exactly.
And it's a very common introduction to characters nowadays. Is that either like Arcade? I think you can be everything, and then I think DOC, I think was that one that had you pick your character and then you had like one or two crafting skills and a gathering skill or something.
Yeah, I don't know. They're just like modern MMOs are leaving a lot to be desired, and I feel like we've covered most of what I wanted to talk about. This was like actually,
Good.
I really enjoyed the chat we've had. You know?
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun talking and discussing it.
Yeah, man. So I'm gonna probably gonna get going here though. It was fun chatting with you. Feel free to join my Discord and what, cause I want to get into like Ultima Online. I'll send you an invite to my Discord if you're interested. And like
Okay.
I met someone in the game already, who's in there, so we can form like a little Ultima Online clan or whatever. I don't know.
I'll send you the Outlands stuff, and I'll invite you to the Outlands Disco so you can see what they're kind of talking about, and you can kind of just take a look at it. It's a really pretty version of UO. The guy Owen's done some really fantastic work. Luthien has done some really custom gumps, for just general UI, quality of life changes. It's a really nice looking server with some custom content that still tries to keep to the core of what UO was. So I'll send you some info.
All right, man. Well, thanks a lot. It was like I really enjoyed this, and I really like having these kind of conversations about MMORPGs. So maybe
Yeah,
we'll
totally. Me too.
yeah. So anyways, I'll see you later, and we'll keep in touch, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll talk to you later, man.
All right, see you.
All right, bye.